Hello friends, welcome back. Today I will start with the fourth module of group dynamics. In this module I will talk about group communication. This is the most important aspect that we are going to discuss about group communication in terms of its significance, where how group members interpret or understand or give meaning to the message through various sources and how it impacts the performance, the efficiency and productivity of the group members. So, getting into the details of this module, let us first discuss and define that what is communication. In a layman's terminology, when we talk about communication, it is something that we are transferring some information to the other person in some or the other manner. It can be through some channel, it can be in form of a speech, it can be in form of a text, through different sources such as email or use of any other technology. But what is the psychology behind communication that works with every individual and group members? That is the most significant and novel aspect when we are talking about group communication. So, when we define group communication, it is the interchange of thoughts or information to foster mutual understanding and trust, because when we are communicating something to the other person, it should be in that information, communication should be so much sound that it not only giving the message, it is also having an impact on the other person, where the person is trusting you or us, where understanding is also existing and trust is also there, that whatever information we have received, it is trustworthy or it is coming from any reliable resource. So, when we are talking about communication, it is a process of interchange of thoughts or information to foster mutual understanding and trust. It includes both the transference as well as the understanding of the meaning of the message. Once the trust is also there, then the interpretation will also be very much correct. But once trust is not existing while receiving the message, or we are receiving the message from a very unreliable source, then it also becomes difficult to interpret the correct meaning of the message. So, in other words, it is a transformation or transmission of information, and it is a continuous process. From moment to moment, we receive some information in different ways in different environment, and moment to moment with our own understanding we try to give meaning to that message. So, it is a continuous process which it also involves all the individuals in the group itself and at the same time relationships. So, communication helps in the development, formation, growth and change of attitudes, beliefs, stereotypes and prejudices. That means whatever constraints we have for the other person, and if we are getting a proper information and feedback from the other sources, then we can curb those negative stereotypical attitudes and prejudices, and we tend to form new and positive impression about the other person. So, this leads to growth in the relationship, it leads to development of new skills, and at the same time it leads to formation of new attitudes, ideas and belief. Further, communication also fosters motivation by clarifying the employee or the members about their task and roles, and timely feedback and reinforcement of the desired behavior which stimulate motivation and thus require communication. This simply refers to that when we are giving feedback to the employees through appropriate words, then the interpretation is also positive. So, this motivates individuals to enhance their performances and at the same time productivity. So, whenever we are communicating a positive feedback, then it is also leading to some reinforcement of positive behaviors, reinforcement to positive attitudes and reinforcement to enhanced performances. So, when we are communicating to the other person, then it has to be on positive notes. Communication is an important source of emotional expression and for the fulfillment of social need. when we are communicating, just now I said that when we are in the process of communication, that communication should be so much clear and so much precise in its own way that it is expressing maximum message with limited words. So, the expression should be clear where the person also understands that how he or she can satisfy his sense of belongingness, because that affiliation, that appreciation, that recognition comes through communication only. Any employee or any member of the group who is actually performing good in his work, if communicated with a positive feedback, then it only enhances his performance and also satisfies his social need, because he or she is getting some recognition for his good work. And last, that communication provides appropriate information that individuals and groups need to make decisions by transmitting data and evaluating the alternative choices. That means when people are coming together, when group members are coming together for a common purpose, then through communication only we can share maximum information with each member, so that we have better solutions to the problems and we have more choices, alternative choices to resolve the problem. So, this is the process of communication which plays an important role in the success of any group or any team within the organization, and how communication plays a major role in not only satisfying the professional goals or the organizational goals, but at the same time communication also plays a major role in fulfilling the social needs and desires. Next comes the communication process. How this transmission of information travels from one point to another. So, social psychologists have identified a typical process that how communication takes place, and in that communication how the real message is being carried from one point to another. So, according to social psychologists, the communication process involves 5 steps. The first is the source, the second is the encoding, the third is the channel, the fourth is the receiver, the fifth is the decoding, and the last is the feedback. That means it completes the cycle of communication, because any communication without feedback is incomplete. So, when we talk about this communication process, the source is the first step to initiate the process of communication, where the message is encoded. That means the message that has to be transformed in some form is being encoded in a form. For instance, when we are trying to convey or transmit any information, we try to transmit that information in some specific kind. It can be through words or text, it can be through graphics, or it can be any visual, or it can be any particular sound which can actually carry a message. The sender will create that message in or idea in a very specific form, and then it is being transmitted to the other person. So, now once that message has been encoded, if that message has been given a specific form, that this is what it carries a specific meaning, it is being channelized or transmitted to 3 different channels. Now, this channel is, it can be anything, it can be through formal or it can be informal as well. For instance, if I say that I want to send a particular idea through a formal channel, then it can be through proper communication through different authorities. That is a formal channel, or it can be informal channel, that in what manner I will convey this message or communicate this message to a particular person based on my choice in a very informal manner. So, when that message which carries the real expression, real meaning is being transformed in a kind, it is being transmitted through a proper channel, that either it should go through the organization from one authority to the another, or it can be informal, and how that message is being received by the person will create another impression. So, the sender initiates a message by encoding a thought, that is to change the information into a form. The sender makes use of symbols, that is words, text, graphics or visuals, to convey the message and produce the required response. That means the sender is waiting to get the response as soon as the message has been transmitted to the other person. This message is the physical product of the sender's encoding. That means when the message is being transmitted or transformed in a specific kind, it can be visual, it can be any graphic, it can be text, it can be any sound, then it is actually being encoded. And when we speak, that speech is the message. So, that message in the speech is encoded, it is embedded. And when we write, the writing is the message. And when we gesture, that movement of our arms and expressions on our faces are the message. So, as soon as this message is being encoded, it is being transmitted through a medium, that is the channel through which the message travels. That means through a proper channel, that means from one authority to the another, or informal, that where we are approaching the target person directly. So, the sender selects it and determining whether to use formal or informal channel. The receiver is the person to whom the message is directed and is received by the through the sender. So, as soon as the message is being channelized to the receiver will open that message, and that message is being translated in its real form. That means, as soon as the message is received, then it reaches the stage of decoding, where the receiver will try to interpret the real meaning of the message. So, as soon as the message is directed, the receiver will open that message and translate those symbols into an understandable form. This step is decoding of the message. That means the text is there, the speech is there, or it can be any visual or graphic picture is there, then immediately that message is being decoded in an understandable form, that what is the real content or core of this message. That means why this message has been sent to me, what is the purpose of this message to be received by the sender, and how it can be executed. So, this is how the communication process starts on. Now, as soon as the message is being received, it starts another process, that is the message and interpretation of the message enters the feedback loop. It is a check on how successful the message has been transferred with the original intention, and it determines whether understanding has been achieved or not. That means, even if the message has been received, the feedback will tell whether the message has been understood or not. If not, then again some communication gap has been created. To bridge that gap, again the communication process will start on. So, the feedback loop is very important factor in the communication process, because it will complete the process whether the message has been received in the correct manner, interpreted in the correct manner. If not, then again the communication is being reinitiated. Now, in this, noise is also there. That means, when it is being traveling from one point to another, some external factors also determine whether the message will be easily interpreted by the receiver or not, or what can be the other factors where the message fails to reach the receiver. So, considering all the external factors, and the real message or the real content in the message will determine whether the communication has been successfully completed or not. So, this is how the communication process takes on. So, communication can be defined as the interchange of thoughts and information to bring about mutual understanding and confidence among group members. Why confidence? Because when the message is being received in a very correct form, then the interpretation is also correct, which actually builds confidence and trust on the other person. So, it all depends that whether the information is correct or incorrect, and to what extent the information has been interpreted in the correct or incorrect form will define the relationship between sender and the receiver. That means, the feedback will define the relationship between the sender and the receiver based on confidence and mutual understanding. Now, once we are talking about how this message transforms, then there are some mediums of transmission of message, especially in an era of digitalization, where verbal, written and visual, all kind of messages do exist when the message has been encoded in different form. It can be in terms of verbal, it can be in terms of written, and it can be in form of visual. So, verbal transmission can be in form of in-person speech, phone conversation, voice over internet protocol, it can be radio, it can be podcast, it can be voicemail, or it can be intercom. If it comes to written message, encoding it in a form, it can be email, it can be text or instant message, it can be a report or article, essay, letter, memo, blog and tweet, and it can be visuals as well, where drawings, paintings, graphic designs, body language, which is a very important factor when we talk about communication, graphs, font types, semaphore, it is a method of visual signaling, usually by means of flags or lights and architecture. That means there are different ways to convey message, but to what extent the message is being transmitted in a very correct manner, that plays a major role. So, this is how message is being transmitted through various mediums. Next is communication, verbal communication. When we are talking about that in what manner the message is being transmitted to the other persons, then there are different ways to interpret those messages as well. So, social psychologists have talked about two types of communication, verbal and non-verbal communication. Verbal communication, as the term implies, it is the use of words to convey message. That is so obvious that where we are using language to convey the message. But what kind of language, what kind of words we are using to convey the message, that will define the communication, the quality of the communication. So, when we are talking about verbal communication, it can be in form of language. Language here means it is the most important source of communication, and it can be in two forms. It is phonetics and semantics. Just now I said that in what manner we are conveying any message verbally to the other person will actually help the receiver to interpret the message accordingly. So, it can be your voice intensity, it can be your tone, it can be your pauses or silences or hesitations which will give a real meaning to your message, that is phonetics. And at the same time, the other aspect of verbal communication in terms of language is semantics. That means how people infer the language or meaning of the language in different way. Now, here some cultural factors also play important, that one object and it has different languages to express the same meaning. So, semantics play a major role, that how we have to convey that message that most of the people should understand or interpret in a very correct and common manner. So, when we talk about verbal communication in terms of language, then there are two aspects: phonetics, the study of speech sound, how they are produced, and the perception of the speech. For example, if the pitch is high and information is new, then there is sort of different kind of impression on the receiver, that it is something shocking, that shocking news, or it has to be absorbed or interpreted in a different manner. Similarly, semantics, the study of the meaning of words and phrases, as different language use different words for the same thing. That is so obvious. We perceive objects in a very similar manner, but how we explain that object or call that object in different manner, that is a different issue. So, that talks about semantics. So, the distinction of the language used in communication can be made on the basis of denotative and connotative meaning. Here, if I just go back to the slide again, that means semantics play a major role, not definitely phonetics is also there, but semantics is that we are interpreting the real meaning of the message in different languages. So, when we talk about semantics, then denotative meaning and connotative meaning play a major role. Denotative meaning, it bears a close relationship to concept formation. That means whatever word we have, whatever object we have in the environment, people will interpret based on that what physical form it has and how to rename that physical form. For example, a piano will be perceived as a piano itself. That means the concept formation is there, that blueberries are always blue. So, it is a concept formation, or I will be in my green car. So, anybody will identify you based on the concept formation, that is the physical characteristics of the car, that is green car. So, this is a denotative meaning, that means it bears a close relationship to concept formation. This constitutes help to define things precisely and are not confused with any other things. If car is there, it is green car. I will not look to any other car color except only green when I am waiting for my friend, that my friend will arrive at the venue in green car. Or in a similar way, people will have no trouble understanding the statement that I will be in a green car. Some other examples can be piano, a policeman, a gun, a portable firearm, or the blueberry is very blue. Now, even if policeman is there, we can easily identify in a particular culture that a person in a particular uniform is a policeman. So, this is a denotative meaning. What denotes whom? So, this is denotative meaning. The other is connotative meaning, that means it carries an wide array of positive, negative emotions. That means whatever we are saying, it is carrying some feeling, some emotions to express that message. For example, if I say that she is feeling blue, now definitely in literal form it is an idiom, but yes, at the same time the message is connotative that the girl is very sad. So, this is a connotative meaning with the wide array of positive and negative associations that most words neutrally carry with them. This suggests a feeling or the main idea. For example, blue is a color, but when it is used to describe the mental state or emotional state of any girl, that she is feeling blue, then that means she is feeling sad. So, this is connotative meaning. What connotes how you relate your feeling and emotion with the other person. Now, these connotations can be positive and negative at the same time. For example, that she is a go-getter. It is actually a very motivating word and at the same time constitutes some positive emotions when we are evaluating the performance of the other person. So, this constitutes that the person is performing very good. So, positive connotations are words that conjure a favorable emotional response. That what is the assessment? So, based on this one particular word, the assessment will be positive, that means connotations are positive. For example, describing someone ambitious as a go-getter or someone who is lively and curious as youthful. So, these are the positive connotations that we ascribe to the other person while defining. It can be negative connotation as well. For example, that the ambitious person might be described as overachiever while curious person might be referred to as childish. That means, we are having a negative impression about the other person and how we are conveying the message for the same person to the other person. So, these negative connotations represents the person or thing in a very unfavorable light. So, this is how we are relating our emotions to every person or object in a very different manner. And yes, this is human tendency to understand or give connotative meaning to any message that has been received by the sender. Now, once we are talking about connotative meaning, then there is some associative meaning or some expressive or stylistic meaning also. That means, in semantics, associative meaning refers to the particular qualities or characteristics beyond the denotative meaning that people commonly think of correctly or incorrectly in relation to a word or phrase. For example, if I say a needle is a word. If we give a very denotative meaning, then it is a thin steel instrument or device, right. But if I am giving it any connotative or associative meaning, there can be several interpretations to this one word, that is pain, drug, thread, knitting or hard to find. So, these are the connotative or associative meaning when we are giving to any particular word and how we relate emotionally to every word. Another example can be a piano. How you relate piano in terms of emotions? It can be a sound, it can be a note or it can be a song. You can relate piano with one of your favorite song where the main character is playing piano in that movie. So, we are giving that connotation in a very associative manner, right. Or the other way can be a policeman. When we talk about, or when we say that think about policemen, you will have so many connotations or associations in terms of authoritative, upright, robbery, helpful and quick. Why? Because these are the behavioral dispositions that we tend to perceive when there is a policeman in a particular event. So, this is how connotative or associative meaning differ from denotative meaning, and how we are interpreting the message to each and every situation or any information that we have received from the sender. At the same time comes the other aspect of communication, that is non-verbal communication. It is a non-verbal human response. This is a specific term used to define non-verbal communication, that is non-verbal human response. Without uttering a word, through your facial expressions, through your eyes, through your body movements or body motions, through the touch, through the eyes, we tend to convey the message to the other person. It can be in the form that suppose I am receiving some anxious news or very different shocking news, I will feel anxious and I will start biting my nails, I will start fisting my hand, or I will start shaking my legs. So, these are the different ways to receive the message and how to convey that what you feel. So, basically non-verbal communication is the non-verbal human response which involves gestures, facial expressions or body movements and the perceived characteristics of the environment through which the non-verbal messages are transmitted. So, non-verbal communication has no structure, it has no vocabulary and it is more spontaneous and reliable. Maybe at one point of time in verbal communication the information can be twisted and the receiver can also trust that fake news, the twisted news. But in non-verbal communication it is very spontaneous and reliable. It is immediately on an individual's face because facial muscles will contract or expand, or it can be through your body movements which will define that what exactly you are feeling. You can never refrain through your non-verbal response that what you are feeling, it is reflected in a very non-verbal response form. So, we can say that non-verbal communication has come to meaning in different forms. For example, paralanguage. This constitutes voice intensity, speech disturbances. For example, when we are anxious, we are unable to speak in a very fluent manner. We will hesitate and at the same time we will find lot of disturbance in our tone and speech to even to speak or utter a word. This is because we are anxious. So, there will be we will experience so much of speech disturbance when we are anxious. It can be hesitations, that means when we are anxious also and we are shy at the same time. For example, we have to deliver a lecture on the stage, we are standing on the stage, then because of hesitation we will find lot of difficulty to find the right word to convey the message or to convey the right meaning of the subject. So, these are the paralanguage parameters of non-verbal communication. It can be silences, that suppose you have received any shocking news, you are silent. So, this is another way to convey, that means a paralanguage, that how you are reacting to that news without uttering a word. It can be laugh, it can be way you are yawning, sometimes it is non-fluency, that if you are not interested in listening to the other person and you are unable to tell him or her very explicitly that I am not interested, then your pitch and tone will start varying. So, this is how paralanguages in form of non-verbal communication play a major role when we talk about non-verbal human responses. So, generally more the way something is said than precise words used. That means, we without using the words we are giving a precise message, a very straightforward message to the other person. Now, when we are talking about non-verbal communication, it is also about kinesthetic or body language. This is one of the most significant parameter or dimension of non-verbal communication. Why? Because it is only your body which gets triggered when we are excited, which gets triggered when we are sad, which gets triggered when we are angry, which gets triggered when we are in a shock and in a state of anxiety. So, when we are talking about body language or kinesthetics, then Ralph V. Zelin is known to have done extensive work on nonverbal communication. Particularly, he was interested to work on eye contact and how eye contact based on facial muscles and eye contraction and contractions, they try to convey message in different forms. So, according to Ralph V. Zelin, he has talked about nonverbal communication based on eye contact, which is indicative of affiliative orientation and information seeking device. For instance, according to Ralph, two people who are engaged in romantic relationship, they will have frequent eye contact, or on the other hand, if people who have high desire for approval and recognition, they will maintain eye contact with the other person. On the other hand, person who has experienced failure in his activity will not maintain eye contact with the other person. In comparison to a person who has experienced success in his task, he will maintain eye contact a lot. The intensity will be high. Similarly, when any person who is very angry, who is very disappointed, then maybe or he is very aggressive, then he will stare the other person in a very violent manner. Maybe he will not fight very explicitly, but through the eye contact which is staring, the message will be conveyed. So, affiliation or any conflicting tendency can be expressed based on eye contact. Similarly, even eye contact can also help in deriving maximum information from the other person. The more you are trying to maintain the eye contact with any group member, the more there is sense of affiliation, the other person will also be able to affiliate with you, and the person will reach a point where he or she can express himself in a very wholehearted manner, and he will try to share maximum information with you. So, eye contact play a major role when we talk about body language or kinesthetics, where it indicates affiliative orientation and at the same time information seeking device. So, kinesthetic also involves emblems, effect, displays, illustrators and adaptators. It is a very deep discussion we can get into, that in what manner body language plays a major role, because there are so much of secretion of hormones when we are in a particular situation, and how the brain triggers and sends a message to the different parts of the body. When we receive any good news, our eyes becomes dilated. We are so excited, we become teary also, the eyes becomes teary. Why? Because the temple bone gets aggravated or triggered and our eyes becomes teary. Similarly, when we watch any painful scene in a movie, then again we are also triggered. That means any situation that we are into, our body will react first, and maybe then only the response will come forth. So, this is the significance of non-verbal communication. Now, the idea is that when we are talking about non-verbal communication, then how come kinesthetics can be expanded to a larger extent, because without uttering a word, we tend to receive a very strong message from the other person. So, Ralph Zelin has talked about some other determinants which makes non-verbal communication more reliable and very pressing as well. So, they have talked about certain other factors, that is emblem, displays, illustrators and adapters. Now, emblems are a term which was used by researcher David Efron. He was a social psychologist, and he has defined emblems as non-verbal signals that can generally be translated directly into words. For example, giving a thumbs up. Now, thumbs up is actually referring to OK or approval of something. It can be your first finger, it is like this. That means it can be translated into word that the other person is saying come here. It can be a forwarding palm which says that it is talking about stop, or it can be thumb to index finger, that is okay, or it can be a wave to say hello or goodbye. That means the word will come later on, the message is already there in your non-verbal response. So, these are the emblems which describes, which translates every word into a non-word. It is actually a vice versa phenomena, that you are giving signals to the words itself, right. Or it can be a hand to ear, that is please speak louder, that means please speak louder. Now, immediately you can understand or interpret the message that what the other person is requesting for. So, these are termed as emblems. The other is illustrator. Illustrators are bodily movements that are directly tied to speech, serving to illustrate what is being said verbally to enhance receiver comprehension. For example, that means illustrators move hand in hand, that means we are speaking and at the same time bodily movements are also there at the same time. For example, we nod our head when we say yes, right. It is never that yes, most of the time we are nodding our head, or we will shake our head when we say no, we shake our fist when we are angry. Even when we are not speaking that I am angry, that gesture is enough to convey to the other person that I am not liking you or liking your behavior. So, anger, approval, disgust, everything can be illustrated through non-verbal communication. The other is affect display. As the term implies, affect displays are non-verbal communication that express emotions and feelings. That means how we are expressing our feelings in terms of happiness, surprise, fear, sadness, disgust and interest in anything based on our facial muscles. Just now I said that when we are happy, sometimes our eyes becomes dilated and our face becomes red, because there is flow or rush of blood on our face and the face starts becoming red or glowing. So, this is the affect display, that means they are extremely informative and influential. Even when you are angry, sometimes our face becomes red. Now, that redness on the face while your eyes are there, when in anger your eyes are wide open and your face becomes red, it is indicative of affect display of anger or hostility or aggression. So, these are very influential and they are very informative. An affect display might accompany folding your hands for silence because you are sad, or two men threaten each other but do not fight openly. That means eyes becomes wide open, face becomes red and you are threatening each other, but you are not fighting. So, message has already gone there that I am not liking you. So, affect displays can be altered or faked sometimes, but at the same time you can alter your facial muscles based on affect displays, that when you are feeling sad from inside, then in a particular situation you are also smiling at the same time. So, it can be faked at one point and it can be altered at one point. And the last is adapters. This is a body motion used by people to adapt or adjust to a communication process. Just now I said a few minutes back that when we get to receive a surprising news, then how we feel immediately. That immediate non-verbal response or body movement will be the real response or interpretation of the message, which induces stress sometimes. For example, we receive any shocking news, we are nervous, we start biting our nails, we start tapping our foot or fingers, or we use another repetitive body motion during that conversation. So, these are the adaptators. We try to find some support in the environment so that we find some kind of balance in expressing our emotions and interpretation of the message. That means we will start tapping the table, or we will start fisting our hands, so that that kind of expression is going out to the other person in a very explicit manner. So, these are the adapters where you are trying to adjust or adapt to the news or the information in the environment, right. So, these are the ways that how kinesthetics or body language plays a major role, especially based on eye contact, that how expressions give a clear message to the other person in a very non-verbal manner. The next is proxemics, chronomics and haptics. We will discuss these aspects of non-verbal communication in the next class. Thank you so much.